So far today, we have heard about financing, branding, marketing, growing, and now we're going to hear about making it in a male dominated industry. Tara and Chef Nyesha, please turn your cameras on and come join me on stage as I introduce your session. We are so excited to hear from Chef Nyesha. We're honored at Yelp to be working with her on a handful of resources for business owners and specifically for restaurateurs. Our Yelp for Restaurants team has been working tirelessly to support the industry in the past year as they've just been hit so incredibly hard. If you're looking for resources, anything from podcast episodes to blog posts and live virtual town halls, head over to restaurants.yelp.com. Chef Nyesha has really fought for her seat at the table, and it's honestly the perfect session to close out our inspiring and action-oriented 2-day summit. As a reminder, we're going to try and leave some time for audience Q&A, so pop your questions into the chat throughout, and our Yelp team will handle sending them over to Tara. But without further ado, Tara, I'm going to pass over the microphone to you.
Thank you so much, Allie. And I'm glad my camera was off because I was leveling up in my seat during that little dance break. Well, good afternoon. It's so lovely to be here today with you. And I hope that the past 2 days together have been impactful and inspiring. I'm Tara Lewis, Yelp's trend expert, and joining me today is Chef Nyesha Arrington. Nyesha has been in love with the kitchen since cooking alongside her grandmother at a young age. Born in Southern California, Nyesha was introduced early to diverse foods such as bulgogi, octopus, and homemade kimchi during the first stages of life, which these experiences infinitely shaped her palate development and her ideas about cooking and culture. Nyesha, welcome, and thank you for being here today. First and foremost, how are you doing, and how has the past year been for you professionally and personally?
Hi, Tara. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone who's attending. So grateful to share space with you this afternoon. How am I doing, and how has the pandemic affected me? Well, today I'm amazing. Myself and my dog took a little bike ride to the beach this morning and got some fresh air, as we love to do. And it was lovely. And, I think 2020 for me has been one of the biggest growth years for myself, my spirit, my human form. Like, I've just really leaned into self-development and, and who I can be as a better business person, and really taking my craft and just leaning into it in the way that is unique to my perspective, right? I think that's really important, in owning and being authentic with your steps. So that's been huge for me.
Yeah, and then how have you navigated work? How has that changed for you since everyone's been impacted?
Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, I'll be honest, Tara, work has been very great. Like, I live in like virtual land. And so I am doing cooking classes, like when the pandemic and all the shutdown first started, I keep generally about a 3-month calendar of events and different activations that I do around Los Angeles and nationwide and international. And, so, that all definitely went away. And, I'd be lying if I didn't say, like, the first month after that, I was like, where are we going with this? Like, what's going on, world? And it was interesting because I closed my last restaurant in 2019. So I was, it was bittersweet that I closed it prior to everything happening in the year 2020. And in 2019, I went to 6 different countries. I did pop-ups all over the world, in New Zealand and France and Israel and Hong Kong and Belize. And it was amazing, huge, awesome year. And, I was like super fit, like just lost 20 pounds. And it was like plant-based, like eating strictly vegan, alkaline. And, I just really valued other aspects of my life, right? Because the last 18 years, all I've done was like hone my craft and like not look up from the cutting board. And I remember the woman who spoke earlier and said, those leadership qualities have always been ingrained in her life, like similar. I grew up playing team organized sports and like running kitchens was an extension of that for me, because how I'm wired, I'm always like trying to find the common denominator. Like, what is the most important task at hand to succeed? And like, if you just know that North Star, like you'll always win, right? So you can sort of reverse engineer once you have that North Star. And so that's like 18 years of my life I dedicated as a chef to that, learning my craft, learning who I am as a leader, learning who I am as a businesswoman. What is my leadership style, right? And that in itself is a whole life lesson of successes and areas of opportunity to grow. So once I closed my restaurant, which both of my places were in top 100 of Los Angeles and all the things, and it's my love language. I'm so grateful to like share it with people, because it's like a guilty thing, because I love it so much. I'm a nurturer. But when I closed my last place 2019, I have taken a step back and learned a lot about myself, in that why am I a chef? Why am I a cook? Why am I so passionate about this? I feel like I never work a day in my life. Well, I think that the reality is I'm a storyteller. I love to celebrate people. I love to celebrate stories of past and how they're going into the future. Our history, all the things that make us human, and like that is the driving force in every decision I make. So I will have to say, so like early on, I was shooting this like plate-worthy episode where I'd go and hang out with these amazing chefs in New York, and we talk about process, because I'm such a like right brain person. And and we draw these dishes and then create them. And I spent amazing times with like Chef Danielle Boulud and James Kent, and just phenomenal humans. And then the show got not canceled, but we couldn't shoot it anymore, Right. And so they were like, do you want us to send you some GoPros and like you shoot it at your apartment? And I was like, oh my God, I'm super down. So like we shot this like new like quarantine cooking thing, and it was just me and my dog here like making up recipes, and it was so fun, and we made like 4 episodes out of it. It's it's on YouTube on the Eater site. And so
I saw it. I was creeping.
It's so fun.
I saw it. Yes,
so
it
fun.
is very fun.
So after that, I feel like just the virtual world started to like blossom more and more. So I did some cool, fun cooking segments. Like I cooked with Selena Gomez, like on a virtual screen thing, and like she had her dogs and I had my dogs, and like we were doing that. So cooking classes, more on camera stuff, because like the sets are like controlled environments and all things. So I've been able to work in that respect. Restaurant wise, like I'm never going to be disenchanted with the business. Like I'm a passionate person about putting a great plan to work and watching it fruit, right? Watering the soil, nurturing, fertilize. I love that. And so of course, like I will definitely open more restaurant businesses. But for me, I'm trying to get like a 10,000 foot scope, because I think we're in this flux stage of like, what is tech and what is food as business entities in these verticals and parallels. And so how are we not saying, right? Because there's 2 types of chefs. There's like the chefs that's like, maybe it's white tablecloth dining and it's more a different echelon or vertical of business, but it's like, it's so experiential that it doesn't translate in a to-go box, So it's like we saw a lot of that dialogue and like these micro concepts, ghost kitchens starting to emerge. But my main point is we see a lot more integration of tech, right? Whether that's on tablets, whether that's, these ghost kitchen app-based micro concepts. And I think it's interesting because some chefs and people say, oh, it's killing our business. But the reality is, if we really look at society, right, since we got the internet and dial up and AOL, like it's only progressed. So we'd be hard pressed to say that that's not going to continue. So I think we really have to be smart about how we're doing business as chefs, right? From both sides, from the creative, which I respect and love so much. Like that's why I do it. But I think it's almost like these 2 different buckets. It's like experiential, high touch, and then separately, these sort of micro concepts. I'm probably not answering your question, I'm just talking a lot, but
no, actually what's funny is that you've actually touched upon other questions that I actually was gonna, lean into a little further at different points. So there's some parallels there. Great. And even just thinking about the fact that you were saying that 18 years you've been dedicated to this, and how this past year has given you some time to reflect. If I ask the same question about, how has this past 18 years been, or how do you feel about your craft? this sounds like the passion is always going to be there, but the way you approach it and the way you see it is continuing to evolve. And I think that that's something that I think is a big part of where growth exists and how we evolve as individuals, professionally and personally. Sounds like you've kind of checked a lot of those boxes, over your career, but also in the past year in a very different way.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd love to hear a little bit about some of your biggest learnings while navigating your industry. I know that now that you have touched upon food in both tech and media and there's all these different segments of that. But at the core, what are some of your biggest learnings that you would like to share with other people that maybe you didn't know about 18 years ago?
Yeah. Well, it's been a long journey. I graduated culinary school in 2002, and I don't know if I should be back in my day, but when I was coming up, it was pre Me Too movement, pre any talks of inclusion. It was, the kitchen life was a whole different world. And I would be I'm not saying, I'm a weirdo. I loved every minute of it because it was so hard. And I'm oh my God, I can totally do this. It's just you have to work really hard.
Yeah.
And that's the recipe. It's just work so hard. And so, I really leaned into my craft, and that's what was my driver, and there were days, I remember as a line cook, right? 2005, whatever, consciously remembering that I need to check myself at the door, my body, because when you go in the kitchen, it's you're just a machine, nothing, you just go. And it's an interesting culture, chefs, because I came up in the Anthony Bourdain is my my everything world,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so there's moments when I met him and just had conversations with him, 2 moments where I'm oh my God, you're so intelligent. But yeah, my point is basically, the world, it was very challenging, right? Coming up, and I will have to say this in full transparency.
Mm-hmm.
It affected my leadership style, because there were times, and this is full of vulnerability right now, as I learn my path, right? There were times in my career where I was not a great leader, because all I knew was, now I know, trauma and abuse, fear-based leadership, right? Is what I was brought up in, fear-based leadership. And where it's you better perform, or you're going to get, embarrassed in front of the whole kitchen. You're whatever, maybe physically abused, maybe burned. That's what I saw. The first day I was in this kitchen, I saw a plate fly past my head. And I was wow. So for some reason, I was yes, this is where I want to be. I'm down. And I lit my soul on fire. And I pushed so hard, throughout my entire career.
Wow.
And yeah, it's crazy. But it's it's almost I don't know. That's why I said I'm a weirdo. It's we loved it, I don't know. There was something that was we're on this ship together, and it's so gnarly. And now I look back and I'm I don't regret it. It's a part of my life experience. It's definitely made me who I am. And I think playing organized sports and team sports and doing martial arts as a kid helped me have life tools and to exercise my cognitive thinking, my critical thinking. And that's why I had success in those spaces, because it's a space that could crumble someone very quickly. I saw a lot of grown men cry a lot. Yeah. And it's gnarly. It's physically demanding, and it's creatively demanding. And so, you got to love it. Like you said, got to be rooted in passion. But, for me coming up, all I can do and all I can say is that I would just try to outperform everyone in the kitchen. That was always, it was not back then. It wasn't a gender thing for me. That dialogue never entered my mind because it wasn't something anyone took into consideration. And so I always just try to never this is so interesting. I always was I'm never going to ask for help. I don't know. I just never going to ask for help. I'm just going to come in early or stay late or come in on my off days to just get stuff done and make sure that I have the sharpest knife in the kitchen and nothing's below me. I'll sweep the floors. My station's the most tight. I want for nothing, like going into service and like Michelin level kitchens was like so psychological. It's so analytical in your thoughts and creativity in equal tandem. And like that is your driving force is to be like at 5 o'clock, like your station is so set up, like all your mise en place is perfect. And you just feel good about going into service, you know? And I loved those nights because you have a good service, you're leading your team, which is what I did. I was called the viand, which is essentially the saucier. Like you basically run the kitchen, the flow of the team. And so, you know, I'd have to fire dishes to fish station, to veg station, to garde manger, while reading the ticket board and while cooking 7 different proteins, you know, organizing, watching the pass. And so you're like in the pocket and like, it's so cool. It's like you're an orchestrator, you know? So when I got to do that, it's just like the biggest like band. You're like, it's like a band, you know, and it's such a beautiful art and something that's so difficult. And so, you know, I just loved it. I don't know. I can't, I don't know if this, I didn't have a lot. I don't know if it was a male female thing. I always just tried to outperform everyone, you know?
Right. I think you said something though that I wanted to kind of dig into a little bit more about asking for help. And I think a lot of people that are joined today probably have a similar challenge with asking for help or knowing when am I at my limit? When am I actually burning resources at the expense of my pride, like whatever the case is? How has that changed for you? And when did you start feeling comfortable acknowledging that with yourself and then actually expressing it?
Just now. That was about 5 minutes ago. No. But the thing is now as a businesswoman, right, I'm looking through a different lens completely, because I think when we're on our journey, it's like your lens just becomes so much more with life experience, right? It's normal. Yeah. We have data, we have things to reflect on. You know, things that worked out, things that didn't. But so now it has changed because now as I'm in these different circles and different rooms and different levels of conversation, it's actually a strength to ask for help. It's actually a strength to use the resources around you. You know, I've been talking to amazing people at Whole Foods and like, I was like, let me just ask this question about my business. And they were like, oh, here's 7,000 resources. I was like, oh my gosh, like that's all it takes. Like, and so it's super cool just to have a network, right? And build and support each other. I think that's really what it is. It's not asking for help is actually not a weakness. It's like, it's vulnerable. There's so much strength in vulnerability. I think it took so many Brene Brown, you know, watching to learn that. And also I have to be honest, Tara, you know what I really learned this last year? Because I started leaning into like fitness and getting really strong. And it was an epiphany to me that strength is not only a masculine quality, you know, strength should not be like, you know, sensitivity with women. Like that's not a gender thing.
Right.
You know, those are just emotions, like, you know, or whatever.
Humans.
They're not exactly
Just humans.
Just humans doing human things.
Right. And, you know, I always say that, that vulnerability and authenticity is what allows you to connect with people truly, whether it's through television, whether it's one-on-one, and it's refreshing. And even if you have, you're very different people, getting the unique and authentic version of each individual allows for that connection. So thanks for being vulnerable with us today and sharing those nuggets. We really appreciate that. And I think that a lot of people heard that and processed it in a way where they probably could relate or are sitting there and saying, you know, me too. Yeah. You mentioned storytelling a little bit earlier, and I was kind of curious, how has storytelling been incorporated into building your brand, and how might others better tap into telling their own stories?
Oh, thank you for the question. Well, I think that storytelling, you know, it started like 2014-ish, and I started going to this amazing mountain up in Utah, and it's essentially this kind of mountain and full of thought leaders and like just amazing people, amazing humans, really doing awesome things in the world behind the scenes. And I thought, wow, like, you know, we sat in these like, you know, cohorts and had like workshops and all the things, and everyone's just sharing their journeys, you know, and like like, again, I don't mean to keep bringing it back to vulnerability, but I think it's hard because everyone does. Like, we go out in the world and it's like, you put on your world face, and it's like, when you could just be like the same person all the time, it's like so cool when people show up as their authentic self, because then it allows space for the other person to show up as their authentic self. And I think there would be less, like, inconsistencies in the world. Like, it would just allow more space for breathing, but I feel like what makes me feel good are the things I want to do, right? And I have to listen to that more in my adult life, because I think every time I didn't listen to, I guess you can call it intuition or whatever makes me feel good, that I feel is the right choice. Whenever I didn't listen to that, it like didn't work out, So I was like, oh, you should like listen to those things, So for me, storytelling, that makes me feel good, So I want to do that more. And so in examples of that are, celebrating my ancestors in my family, my great grandma Lena and her amazing lemon meringue pie that, like, I learned the recipe just recently. Because my dad always tells me stories about her, but I think honestly, like, I had more bandwidth and I was almost listening with new ears, because he told me this story during the pandemic, and I was like, Dad, you never told me about this. He's like, Nyesha, I've probably told you the story at least like 10 times. And I'm like,
you were just open to receive it differently. Yeah.
Exactly. Literally, I was like, you have no idea how much meaning to my life you just gave me with that story of like my great grandma and like all these amazing things she used to make. And I was like, wow, like, no shit. I'm a cook, a chef, like, and then my grandmother being a Korean immigrant and learning how to taste diverse foods from her. My grandfather met her in the Korean War, brought her back to Los Angeles. They had my mom, and obviously my mom had me, but like, my grandmother showed me her world through her food, so storytelling, I mean by that, by the sound of when I would go to my grandmother Isoon's house and open the door of the refrigerator, and I remember hearing the like clinking of glass bottles all the time, because she would save all the jars and like make her own concoctions of sauce. And none of them were like sauces that you would buy at the store. They were just like different chili oils and fermentation and all the things. And then, it was just, I noticed that was different because no other place I'd been as a kid had that, it was like so I think those are the things. So now I'm sitting here talking to you guys about it. Like, that's storytelling. That's, and it shows up on my menu somewhere. And then I share that, like, that's so cool. That's like the fabric of humanity, Yeah.
And you said, you mentioned intuition, and there's a quote that's something along the lines of like, intuition's a muscle. The more that you use it, the stronger it is. And how I think as I've gotten older, it's like I've tapped into it further, where I think when I was younger, I heard it, but it was like a faint whisper maybe. And I was like, I don't know what you're saying. And now I'm like, oh, that's you, and you've never been wrong. So I think that's a great way it's hard to identify within your own self sometimes, because you might be thinking you're being authentic, and then there are disconnects that you might feel, or there might be moments where you do realize that there are shifts or dissonance there. And I think that like listening to that voice and actually making space for it is a big part of discovering like, who am I really? And then I can tell my authentic story because I'm in touch, right? So you mentioned intuition, and I'm like, yes, you got to exercise that intuition muscle. It gets better and better the more you use it, right?
Yes.
So I know that you are always working on lots of exciting projects and initiatives. What are a few that you'd like for us to know about coming up in the future?
Oh my gosh. Which one should I talk about?
Well, let's just start wherever you need to.
No, there are so many exciting things. It's like, I'm really grateful. I really am, because it's been, and it continually will be a journey. My cat is typing an email on my computer over here, apparently. So, I'm so grateful, because you have to freaking believe in yourself so hard, and harder than anything else. And that's so important. Oh my God, I'm not going to get emotional. No, but this year, I'm just grateful. Lots of like, projects. I don't know. I'm like working on some sauce things that like I want to share with the world. I want to do a pop-up soon. I think that would be important, because I think people really miss indoor dining, and like now that we're opening in LA, I'd love to do a pop-up and really create something that I can celebrate with people in that, because I think like that is so beautiful, right? So look out for that for sure. Probably Q2-ish.
Okay.
And then I'm working on a podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
tell us about your podcast.
It's amazing. My co-host's name is Philip Camino, and our podcast is called Happy Mouth. And it is essentially like, when you go to a fancy restaurant, you get like an amuse-bouche, and like, you get a small bite, and it's meant to amuse your palate. It's meant to warm your belly and get you excited about your meal. So that's sort of where the name came from, because the word amuse translates to happy mouth, essentially to amuse the mouth. And so Happy Mouth is going to be sort of these smaller, like short format restaurant news episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll kind of toggle between like, they'll be like basically daily news. And we kind of say it's like a bite-sized, you get it in bite-sized doses. And we'll talk about like food trends and pertinent news that I think, hospitality professionals want to know, because, especially in our world, it's almost like not 24-hour a day job, but it's really hard. It's like you're not ever not a part of it, right? So to get these like updates quickly and like get on with your day is great. So like food trends, different news pieces, from an LA perspective, but also celebrating things that are from a global perspective, sort of macro lens things as well, as that presents itself. But so I'd say that's the project I'm super passionate about. On a personal note, I'm super stoked because I'm going to this really amazing tastemakers dinner in Puerto Rico in like
what?
weeks. Yes, girl.
We're feeling some sort of way. I mean, we're really happy for you, but we're low key like, I wish I was going with you.
We gotta make this happen. I'm just like, I'm like tribe. You just have to really like build things together, and all of it's possible.
Oh my God, tell us about all of it. We want to live it for you. Yeah.
Yeah. But so that's coming up. It's like a 10-person dinner, and should be amazing. Yeah. Jose Enrique is the chef of it. And but what else? That's pretty much it. I'm always on Clubhouse. I love that app. Lots of cool other stuff, but just all things I'm working on. It's hard to keep me still.
Yeah. Are you still, I know that you are into snowboarding and some surfing. Actually, I saw that you skateboarded too. I was like, you have the boards covered. Are you able to keep that going, with your schedule? How are you able to fit in some of the other personal things that make you happy?
Honestly, Tara, I think that being an entrepreneur, right, working for myself, I have tailored my life in a way that I can find balance. Like going for a bike ride this morning, I work out with a trainer twice a week, I schedule time for happiness and fitness, and because I think those board things are kind of like extracurricular fitnessy things, I think but yeah, I think it's I definitely consciously schedule time for that stuff for sure, because it makes me a happier person.
It's so important. And I think it's when you're busy, it's so easy to sort of make that take a second tier and priority, when really it should be a top tier priority. It's like the busier you are, the more it should actually increase in your priorities.
Like facts.
You can't also give the way you want to give unless you're nurturing yourself either. So it's like, be the best version of yourself. You have to prioritize that. So I'm glad that you have that all figured out.
Well, it's a new thing, because it was like that first 18 years leg. I was like, I was just like going, so I was like, there's a whole other side. Drink a gallon of water a day. It'll change your life.
Yeah. Well, in terms of just even your transition from the kitchen to the TV kitchen, I'm sure people recognize you a lot more now. And some people truly embrace that sort of public persona part of it. And some people are like, I kind of like having a little bit more to myself. How has that been for you in terms of, that shift from, doing your thing passionately and then doing it in front of everybody?
That's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking. I think, in the beginning when I did Top Chef, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy, because it's like you're so in your own little bubble, but then you're cooking this. Well, I'll speak for myself. I was cooking And I remember just like, I'm in this zone in this world, and then you look up and there's like 17 cameras and lights and people, and you're like, oh shit, like I'm not alone in this. But you know, so that to go from that to now, you know, that was 2012. I did my first like on-camera cooking stuff. And then wow, so 9 years. Yeah, I feel like, you know, it's been a journey for sure. And I love it. Honestly, Tara, I do love it because I think that I do, because here's the deal. I spent so much time cutting my teeth, doing the right, like I didn't just come into this saying, oh, I'm a TV chef. I think why I have been doing it more is that I just love sharing what I'm passionate about with people. And it's been growing, you know, like I just judged a couple shows that are coming out. So
Ooh.
I know. I think I can say it.
We'll check your Instagram and be like,
Yeah.
you know, the open eye emoji, we're ready.
Yeah.
No, it's coming. I know you might not be able to say it yet, but we'll be on the lookout.
Yeah, for sure. So I love it. And there's some cool stuff coming down the pipeline that I just want to make sure that like we're putting out good food content always, you know, because here it's interesting, right? Because once social media came around and like you saw the chef change, right? Because before it was like the recipe, the proverbial recipe was like you have your four walls, you get a good write up, you write a cookbook. Yeah, like great, that's the chef life. Like, you know, maybe, but then you know, what's the progression from that? It's been like Wolfgang Puck, then he has his like food line, right? And then that opens up a whole nother world. Then you have like the Guy Fieri's who like had the dynamic TV personality and the food lines and all the things and social media. And, you know, and now it's hard because people, I'm not naysaying it for context, but like, you know, a lot of times people are like, oh, chef, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's interesting because chef used to be such a different thing. It's like, if you say you're a chef, it's like, it's a different thing than just being a cook or whatever, you know? But what my point is that I think as we progress, it's like, you know, I guess, yeah, it's two different things. It's like TV chef versus chef. But I never wanted to be the person who's a TV chef. I know I always wanted to do like entertainment because I love it. Like my family, there's musicians in my family and things, but I never wanted to be like just not knowing what I'm talking about, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, and I like hard work. So I was like, I'll work hard right now in my like, you know, 20s and 30s. And then, you know, now I'll just, my cat felt so compelled to knock my sunglasses off the table. It's a jerk.
Your cat is a star just waiting to emerge. That's what's really happening.
He really is.
Well, we have some time left for audience questions. So if you do have any that you'd like to send over, please do so. And I'll be sure to ask Chef. One question that did come in, how do you leave room for evolution and adaptation without moving too far away from your vision and your passion?
Well, I think that it's one and the same, honestly. I think if you are leading the passion is that small voice. Like, what do I love? Right? And when you can answer that and create that North Star, that's the passion. And I think when you can identify that, like everything else will fall into place, right? Well, I think when we're talking about innovation and progression, you know, I think that's going to be inevitable with that root system has to be whatever the passion is. Like that, nothing else is going to progress or evolve in the way I imagine you want it without the passion piece. Like, so I think that when that can be identified, you kind of reverse engineer and it all comes together, you know?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the question. And also thank you for answering it. Another question that's just rolled in. Who has been your biggest inspiration?
My dad. I think my dad has been my biggest inspiration. He definitely, as you know, and now in my adult life, I more and more every day, I'm so grateful for the way that my parents raised me. Of course, I'm grateful for my mom too. You know, absolutely. But my dad he has such a beautiful brain and like such a universal perspective on life. And like, he's just the type of guy who would like give like an ant on the ground, his last piece of food. And like, I just feel like in a world now where everything's so readily available at our fingertips, it's like things we need to make sure we still have sacred things, to give us some footing. And I just feel like, I was just grateful. Like, I don't know if it's like his teachings, but like, who he is. It's like, he was such a
make him a legend. Say his teachings. I'm sure he'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Put it on a meme. Make him go viral. We'll start quoting him ourselves.
Yes.
That's the next phase.
Yes.
All
Here
right.
for it all.
I'm here for it too. I'm looking out. What advice do you have for female chefs and women in the restaurant industry?
Wow, love that question. What advice do I have for female chefs and women in the restaurant industry? Well, I think that it is important not to just say that we support each other and pay it lip service. I think it's very important to actually do the work, and it's not easy, right? It's definitely not easy, but I think we have to make sure that we're always opening doors for other people and making sure that we always nurturing relationships, because that's the hard part, right? The easy parts are, obviously what presents itself. It's almost the low-hanging fruit, but the hard minutia part is like putting in the work, like for a long time, and I think it's important to have innovation, but you have to also celebrate the root system of like what makes, food. It can't come too far. I think it's important. I think everyone has a different story to tell in their food journey, but I think in the food business, we definitely need to nurture more women leaders, because I know in my experience, I had to learn like what my voice is, and I still am learning that, because I think for so long I was like, oh, maybe not that my voice doesn't matter, because I've had to lead teams, of course, but it's intimidating sometimes, of course, when I'll speak for myself, when was the only woman in the kitchen and only woman of color, there were times where I didn't feel like, oh, I have any weight in my voice here,
Right.
And so I had to, and now I can articulate that. Now I'm like, oh, that's why I felt anxiety. But you have to just like, it's so hard, but you have to like, just make yourself uncomfortable and like get in the rooms and speak up and feel valued, because I think sometimes when we don't feel value, we don't give our value, Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the nurturing, because that's something that is not always seen and appreciated when it's happening, and even when it's not happening. So to actually identify that and share that with others, I think is a really important point, because I think it lays a great foundation. And I think it is truly what will help establish and allow others to grow and flourish in the industry. So thank you for that. One last quick question. Is the podcast live? If not, when is it coming out?
You guys can find it mid-April, about April-ish. Yeah. It's not live yet. We've been doing lots of practice episodes and getting our flow down and getting all of our collateral and things together. And we want to make a big splash. So definitely support us and tell people about it, because it'll be really fun. And hopefully it puts a smile on people's face, and, just talk about all the things. And it's called the Happy Mouth Podcast. You can find it on Instagram. We have an Instagram there, and Happy Mouth Podcast is the handle.
Don't mind me while I go find that handle. I'll just be doing that in a second. Thank you. Okay. Well, I think we're just about, of course, we will continue to support you, and we appreciate you so much for your vulnerability and insight. And we are so proud of you as sort of a sisterhood. We're cheering for you. Thanks for joining us today, and just continuing to inspire so many people. So we're going to be definitely checking out your podcast and everything else, following you on social, following the podcast on social.
Yeah, my social is Nyesha Joyce, if anyone's hanging around. I post most of my stuff on there.
And we'll be with you on your trip. Don't you worry. Whatever you choose to share. Well, I hope you have a great day. I'll now hand things back over to our host to wrap up things for the day.
Thank you so much, Chef and Tara. That was amazing. Chef, you said a quote. You said it's actually a strength to ask for help. And I love that. I love that transparency, honesty, vulnerability. You two rocked the house. What an epic way to end this 2-day summit. Thank you for your time. You guys can jump off stage, turn your cameras off while Emily and I wrap up the summit, but thank you so much.